Hello, friends, and welcome to episode 136 of Discourse in Magic with Jonathan Friedman. Now, Jonathan has his ear to the ground in a whole bunch of different areas of magic. He has his ear to the ground in terms of magic stores, in terms of magic magazines, and in terms of magic passions. And what I mean by that is combining your non-magic passions with magic to come up with new presentations. So let's say you have passions for cooking or for science or for podcasting or for dragons or whatever the case may be. This episode is going to teach you exactly how to use the information that you have from your other passions in overlap and in presentations for your magic. In terms of who Jonathan is to talk about those subjects, he has released books on the topic of music and magic, so using music presentations in your magic trick. So I think that this episode is going to give you a ton, particularly if you are interested in finding the overlap between your other interests in magic, but most importantly, you'll let me know how you feel at the end of the episode. So here it is, episode 136 of Discourse in Magic with Jonathan Friedman. So I'm super excited. We're here with Jonathan Friedman. Jonathan, how are you?
I am fantastic. Excellent to be here. Thanks for having me.
I am super excited to have you on and excited to talk magic and presentation and get all the way in it. So let's start at the very beginning. How did you get into magic? How did you start this thing?
How did I get into magic? Let's see. When I was a kid, just like most everybody, probably within the ages of 6 or 7. My father did a few tricks for me. The vanishing thumb or the stretching thumb. He made me an impromptu Svengali deck out of a short red-black scenario. He was a budding amateur magician. And then I kind of just took it from there and went through it was the main thing in my life. Then I drop it, main thing, drop it. And now it's officially stuck. So So I'd say from really seriously from about age 12 on up, it's been the obsession.
So I want to talk about that whole main thing, drop it, main thing, drop it thing. So what was the journey of your life, maybe from high school forwards, in terms of how you saw magic playing a role and then what role it played in your life, whether it was, did it play a role financially? Did it play a role just as maybe an escape from all of that? Or was it maybe slowly growing and your hand in other honeypots was a safety blanket?
Okay, well, let's see. When I was in high school, I did both. I was a musician slash magician, never mixing the two together, but I had a band, so I did that. And I also had worked at a couple restaurants and whatnot, which I will say this. I think restaurant work is a wonderful thing for everybody to do. I think people under the age of 21 have trouble with it. And I'm going to primarily speak for myself due to lack of experience for myself, or even from just, there's something about having a smart aleck 14-year-old kid come at you and try to fool an adult while he's there with his date.
100%.
That just doesn't seem to work.
100%.
And I learned the hard way.
Unfortunately, there's things working against you. I think that if you're that young, like what stand-up comedians say, it's the elephant in the room. So if you're a stand-up comedian and your head is 4 times the size of other people's heads, you can't go out there and talk about the weather. The first thing you have to talk about is the size of your hilariously big head. And then once that's out of the way, then you can talk about your comedy and everything is fine. But yes, I agree with you off the bat. I think it's very difficult for a 12-year-old to approach a table and convince them to give him the sort of respect that magic maybe deserves in a restaurant, setting.
Oh, you know it. And I had too many of those brutal moments of, just that I don't really want to do this anymore. This is tough. And it coincidentally lined up perfectly when I was going away to college. Okay. So I went away to college and I immediately made music my forefront thing. I was in a college town. I was going to get a band going, and that's what I did. That became how I paid my bills, if I had to have a part-time job, it was going to be playing in a band at the time. I never gave up magic during that whole time. If anything, I just became stunted in my Yeah, exactly. I got good at what I was working on or what I had, the books I had, but I stopped buying new stuff. And this would be about 90, 91, 92 in that area. So I was well versed in the 80s. I knew all my 80s stuff, but it stopped right there. And then, flash forward for the next 20 odd years, I was doing music. That's what I did. Magic was always in there, backstage, amongst friends, goofing off, whatever. But it was never anything that I was actively trying to necessarily get published or even had any next level plans for. I was going to continue to do that. Whatever, when the music career, when it was time to hang up the guns, which I went out on top, I'll say. I was glad to retire on my terms. I did that. I was like, you know what? I always said when I retire from music, I'm going to be that guy that's going to start doing magic for his kids and grandkids or whatever. And I did. I just jumped in, and thank goodness the internet was around at this point, and I could just start absorbing and learning. And what I found out was, I mean, yeah, there was a huge colossal change in uh, the way magic is performed, not just the
A change in how
technological
magic is
terms.
performed. So what is that change? Because it's like, it's like someone who went to prison for 10 years and they came back out,
That's exactly what
and you're
it
like,
is.
what are these
Yeah.
weird squares you're holding in your hands? Like, what is this, dude? Right. So
Well, yeah, the whole cardistry thing that blew
I
me
was
for a
talking
loop.
about cell phones and prison, but
Oh,
no,
I
but
see what
listen,
you're
I
talking
like
about. Yeah,
yours
but
is listen, yours is great too. Like yours is more along the lines of what we were talking about. So you disappear from magic for 10 years, you come back, and now you're like, whoa, everything's different.
when I went away, it was not uncommon for if a person was going to do a 30-minute set to see three tricks in that time. I mean, the long routines, lots of multi-phase routines. It seemed like instantly I was battling this short attention span. If a magic moment didn't happen within the first, I'm being generous in saying 60 seconds, but 30 seconds, where you have to really hook them with some. I mean, it was totally foreign to me because I grew up watching these magicians that would kind of comfortably talk for a while. It'd be a Tom Mullica or whatever, just even a Daryl, just being comfortable talking with people, and then the cards kind of start to come out, and it wasn't, hey, look at this, blank, and something changes instantly. And I work at a magic shop now. That's kind of what I did. I said, if I'm going to go in, I'm going all the way in, and I got a part-time job working in a magic shop, and I found out really fast what type of tolerance the average audience member has. It's even just if their only exposure to magic now has been watching YouTube, they're so used to seeing it happen so fast, having that magic moment. It still is. I'm not going to say it's a hurdle for me because I do what I do. That's what I do. I talk. I'm a talker.
So I have a few thoughts on that. The first is I agree with you, and I think there's been a big shift from aiming to have your act, or sorry, aiming to have a trick be 8 minutes long versus now where you really want to aim to have a trick be 5 minutes long. And there's a few reasons
Right.
I think that's true. You see like the Fool Us's and the America's Got Talents and we're talking about bare bones act here. We're not talking about vaudeville. We're talking about like we need to fit 4 of these between 2 commercial breaks. So this is going to be as tight as possible. So my first thought is, yes, we're sort of in this tighter era now where people don't, not everyone goes to the theater, for a night. We have our own entertainment in our house and things are quicker. And so I agree with that. But what I will say for the case of a show or a performance is there is room for the larger thing, but you have to earn it. You have to earn a
Sure.
10-minute routine now. Once upon a time, the person comes out and they could do their 10-minute. Now, a 10-minute act needs to be earned because the first trick is something quicker, right? And the second trick proves you're intelligent, right? And the third, and now you've said, okay, you now know how good I am. You now know that I can do it. We can stop doing magic for a little bit while I talk, and then we can, you know what I mean? Like you have to earn that sort of pacing and things like that. So I agree with you. Things are
Completely agree
different,
with that.
but they're not lost. There's not lost for good, right? There's still room for us talkers
Right.
to find our way. So that's interesting.
But
You
what's
came back to
kind of
magic things were different. And what else was different?
Well, okay, let's see. Just the styles of tricks and stuff. It was not unheard. Well, first of all, I spent a lifetime, or at least up to that point, acquiring bicycle invisible decks and everything looking like bicycle, because that's the way it was. If you were using anything other than a bicycle deck, you were suspect. They were like, well, he just went to the magic shop before I did. And this whole, now there's 20 decks of cards that come out per day, and everybody accepts that, and you can get away with that, which is something I totally I was putting my energy in the wrong direction. I was like, oh, I have to be able to do all of my magic with this one deck, or be able to switch it for another deck, because I don't want people to think that I'm using a trick deck. I don't think people care about that anymore. They see cards and the back designs, and that's fine for them. Even the nature of the tricks that I was doing, I came from the 80s into the 90s. Packet tricks were very large back then,
About the cards, I always think that magicians project that the world was changing when really the world wasn't changing. Like, really, when someone had cards 20 years ago versus cards now, the reason why you'll see different cards in different old magic books is because those cards were more accessible based on the location they lived in. So you'll watch like Vernon use different cards than Marlowe, I don't know that, by the way. Other people, someone knows the better names of who used different cards, but I do know that the cards were different in the books based on which cards were popular in those locations. So I think that magicians project that idea that now people are more used to it. But you're right about seeing everybody go from using bicycle to everybody using a wide array of different cards, and that feeling really strange, because you've got a catalog in your closet of 1,000 different decks, but they all look the same from the outside, but they all do different things. Versus someone else who has 1,000 decks, they all look different, but they all do the same thing. Let's talk about packet tricks, because I know you love packet tricks even now, and I do feel what you're talking about. No one's doing packet tricks anymore. So why?
And it was kind of
what happened?
Well, let's see. I came up. What my first packet tricks were like? I think it was Color Monty and Wild Card, of course. Flipped out fours, 8-ball. A lot of those, what were they? Emerson and West, I believe, was the name of the company. Had them all there at one point in time. And I was never a working magician where I was in a restaurant and I had to worry about pocket space or anything like that. If I wanted to work on a specific trick, I'd carry it with me and have a couple packet tricks in my wallet, and it was fine. I could get away with that. It seemed like overnight the packet trick went away. Unless it was a packet trick done with small, normal cards from a deck of cards, like a 4-card packet trick, whatever, like a Twisting the Aces or something along those lines. It literally, and I tried to figure out why was it? Was it, again, what we're talking about? I mean, I just don't have an idea of what made them fall out of fashion. Whereas, a lot of tricks just fall out of fashion. That's that. Now, as I work in a magic shop now, we still sell the Color Monty, and it still plays. Wild Card still plays. But some of the more far out ones, I haven't tried them. Some of them become very dated. I will say that. The artwork or the subject matter. Like there's what's his name? Mary Iddid had a trick called the punchline was that these were marked cards, and you turn them over, and it's the Marx Brothers on the back.
Oh, that's awesome!
And well, you know who the Marx Brothers are, and I know who they are. But there's a whole generation of people that don't have a clue what a Marx Brother is.
That's a good point.
And so those kind of go away, unless you're talking about Richard Marx cards. And for me in the 80s, that works.
Right, the whole different game.
That's exactly right. So, so those tricks were great, and now they become kind of little collector's items. Most of them seem to be in bridge size. At least a lot of those Emerson and West ones that I recall were bridge size cards. And maybe it's that false snobbery that I was going through of like, these aren't bicycles. I have to put these away, and I don't want to be called. People will think. Somebody told me, I cannot remember who said it, if it was a magician or if it was a layman, but that I didn't want to leave the spectator thinking that if they'd have just beat me to the magic shop, they could have done the same trick as me. In my mind, it was like if they see I'm coming out with these white blank cards with a little 8 ball on it, which 8 ball, one of the packet tricks I was doing, they're going to be like, well, he's obviously has a packet trick that he bought in a
But
magic shop. How great
that
could
is
he?
an interesting point that I think is not lost. Like that truth is not lost. I don't think that that is someone lying to you. Like I think if you come out and you say it's like that moment. It's one of my favorite magic moments in a movie, and it's in the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin. Steve Carell reaches behind the teen girl's ear as a little joke. It's his like the daughter of the girl that he's dating, and he reaches behind her ear and he pulls out a giant coin. And he goes, "There was a giant coin behind your ear." And he goes, "Oh no, wait." And then he pulls out a rubber ear. And he goes, "And a rubber ear." And the girl goes, she's got a deadpan face, and she goes, "You mean to tell me that you were walking around all day with a giant coin and a rubber ear in your pocket?" And
Yeah,
that is so, it's obvious. That's true, right? The girl
yeah,
is
yeah.
right. And that joke about magic is correct. So, yes, if you come out there with 3 cards with a printed 8 ball on it, I can understand how somebody feels like, cool, where'd you get that? You know?
That becomes the focal point.
Instead
Oh,
of
it's a prop from a
right,
magic
instead of
shop.
how'd you do it, it's where'd you get that. And even though it could still be fooling, like you don't know
Right.
where that ball came from or where the thing, you're still like, wow, I want me one of those because that was cool,
Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah, that's exactly
so
right.
I don't think that that's lost today. I think that that's a good approach, and that might very well be the reason why some of the printed magic packet tricks are gone. I don't know why some of the more normal looking ones are gone, but the printed
Yeah, they
ones,
stay around. Your Twisted
yeah, they
Sisters
stay around.
or
Yep.
B-Wave or whatever, those stick around, and it might be what we're talking about. They look like classic cards.
Hmm.
They don't look like a cartoon on it,
Yeah.
and which you kind of have to shift for your audience. You can't be doing a formal
Totally.
performance and
Totally.
have Wile E. Coyote on a card or whatever it is.
So I like that. I like that there's been a real change and stuff like that. And let me ask, I know that you're a big fan of the older Magic. Have you felt yourself changing with the times, or have you felt yourself being the light, of the past, trying to
Sure. Well, there's it depends on the performance venue. It took me, if you look at some of my older YouTube
yeah.
videos, and I tried to pull as many of them that were brutal to watch, but there's still some in there that, my gosh, a magic moment doesn't happen until like minute 4, and I can't believe anybody even hung on to watch on YouTube. It doesn't have the same energy as a person to person thing where I can hold you there for 4 minutes. But in make believe land, where I'm recording myself just to post it to YouTube and I'm talking to the camera as if I'm talking to someone, that just wasn't working. So for that type of performance venue, yes, I recognize that the magic has to happen quick, immediate. I mean, before it's going to get clicked off. No one's going to sit there and listen to you on the phone while they're watching talk for 30 seconds even before something happens. I mean, it's click, 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 click. So in that avenue, I have changed that part of my performance style. And I was glad to do so because people from my era, I sound like an old man, people from my era, it is not uncommon for them to be like, stay off of YouTube. YouTube's a bad place. The internet was not made for magic. And I completely disagree. Yes, there's a sea full of crud that you're going to have to get to wade through to find things that are good, but it's become a legitimate performance venue. It's the vaudeville
Of
of our
course.
days now.
Absolutely. The simplest, there's so many different arguments for the internet and magic, but the simplest is they're not going anywhere. So, I mean,
Right,
what
right.
like you can yell, you can scream, and but all the people that are yelling and screaming are just going to slowly grow old and then die.
Mm-hmm,
So,
mm-hmm.
I love the internet. I see that there are problems with it. I don't really see any good in like being all up in arms about anything.
I can't fight and I'm not even sure I would want to fight it because I tried to go back in time and think about if I was a youth or somebody coming up in magic and I had access to what, and I'm sure you hear every magician say this, but if I had access to what is out there now, and I tell this story to people. There was a time in the late 80s where all I wanted to do was see some of these Jay Sankey tricks that only existed in book form. I wanted to see them performed by him. And this is before he was releasing. He had like a couple VHS tapes out through US Toy in Kansas, and that was it. I would have paid $100 back in the '80s, and that's some serious change, to just get a videotape of being able to see what the thing was actually supposed to look like. And that's totally taken for granted now.
Yeah, I mean, and
people do not know what they have in front of
of course,
them.
but also there's other, there's other value that we don't have, the depth that you went into books that I've
Sure.
never opened up, and different things like that.
Right.
So it's different, it's all different, and it all feeds into each other, because the same beast that's making it so that I can learn something in under 10 minutes is the same beast that's making it such that audiences want to see tricks that start much quicker. You know what I mean? So it's all they're all interweaved and related to each other. I wanted to transition a little bit and talk about the Magic store that you're working at. So it's the one you're in Seattle, right? It's the
I am in Seattle.
So it's the Market Magic Shop, which is relatively famous, in terms of as far as magic stores go. I've heard of it, which means it's up there. It's
yeah, it's let's see. I'm going to say this is what I tell everybody. So I've either been lying to everybody consistently or this is true. One of the two. But I believe it is the oldest original location magic shop in the country.
And how old is
where
that?
It has not moved. It opened in 1974.
That's pretty bonkers.
Yeah, and there's plenty of older shops, but they've had to kind of move from building to building. But this one opened up in the market, so you've got the classic fish throwing going above you, the floor above you, in every restaurant, and it's a magical place to begin with. So
let's talk about the Magic Store right now. So what's that like? What is it like to be in a Magic Store right now, in terms of you've got your ear to the ground of magic? And most importantly, if you could give us all the inside scoop of what is everyone going to a magic store doing wrong and what are they doing right? Do you ever leave and you go, oh, I can't believe they got that. They would be so much better off getting that, or do you ever say well, this kid knows what he's doing. So what obviously everyone's different, but what could people be doing better with their dollars and usage in a magic show, and what could people be doing, or what are people doing wrong?
Well, let me ask you this: are you talking about somebody who's going to a magic shop with the sole purpose to buy something, or are you just coming in for a good time? Because we, honest to God, have people come in and they treat it like, when's the next show? And we just kind of
maybe my perspective was this: if somebody is lucky enough to be getting deeper and deeper into magic through the likes of their local magic shop, like, what is the journey that you would recommend to them? I remember a distinct moment in my magic life when I was told, like, it's time that you stop buying tricks and start buying books. I got a little pat on the shoulder, but that time, had someone told me to buy books when I first walked into the store, that probably wouldn't have been the right approach.
It's amazing that you're bringing that up, because I have this discussion on a weekly basis with somebody. It'll be like the dad was in my age, we'll say, and they've come in, maybe they did some experimentation with magic growing up and they learned from kids, but they wanted to go next level and they started getting books or whatever. They'll come in with their kid, trying to pique the kid's interest and saying, what do you have that would get my son? I mean, where can he learn some good magic? And I'll go to the books, and I try to make it something that, I'll give you a perfect example. Josh Jay's
book is amazing.
It's a perfect book because I can sell it on many different levels. It's got the DVD, it's got the book, it's full color.
And also Josh doesn't hold back in giving good quality. So
that's exactly what I tell them, that he's gone through and picked the creme de la creme, and it's quality stuff. And I can see 85% of the kids' eyes just glaze over at that point, no matter how good the book is. That's today's audience right there. So by any means necessary, as the demo guy, I still believe in the written word. Whatever I can do to get a book into their hands. But I can't, just because somebody goes to a magician who's budding and says, you need to go ask for Erdness. You need to go get Royal Road to Card Magic. They're going to walk out with this book thinking it's all the answers. And it does have all the answers, but all the answers are only good if you know how to read them. And even what the questions are. You have to know what the questions are first to find the answers. And it could be that frustrating enough that it could kill the spark of magic, and they don't want to go back to it. I had kids growing up, and I didn't understand how the instructions worked, and I put the kid away, and it was a toy under my bed. And so, if they don't get it, and if you don't present the stuff to them in a way that they're going to be able to understand and take it in, it doesn't matter how good the material is. They have to be open.
And of course, each person is on their different journey through magic. Some people are there to buy a little prop, and some are there to start a career. And obviously that varies. From a magic shop perspective, are kids coming in and saying different things than they were before? Are people coming in? I mean, obviously now someone's coming in saying they just saw Shin Lim instead of saying they just saw David Copperfield, but or as well. But what's different now about what the young people are saying when they walk in the shop? How are people getting into magic right now? Because you've got your ear to it.
Yeah. Okay, I would say it really is. I mean, hopefully I can keep saying this for a while, that we're in a renaissance. I've been using that for a while, that we're in another golden age. You have so many avenues. Magic became cool again. If it's because of Fool Us, or if it's because of now you see it, now you don't, or whatever it is, everybody has a cheap. I hope it doesn't become overexposed. But yes, that is where. But it's YouTube. I'm going to keep coming back to that. That seems to be the hook. That's what's getting the people and saying you should take it to the next level, because they're seeing stuff. They're seeing a magician do stuff that they probably have never had a chance to see before. And then voila, they come into a magic shop. They look down and they see a deck of Chris Ramsey's cards right there. And they're like, wow,
it's all related. That's the same guy.
It's all related. Right. And I don't think when I was a budding kid, went into a magic shop
with any knowledge outside of things I learned from that magic shop.
That's exactly right. So it is. There's a responsibility of the person who's giving. Now, okay, this brings me to a good point here, because I feel pretty comfortable talking with people, and also my skill set is wherever it is. I've been doing it for a while, and there are two schools of thought. There's the guy who wants to genuinely give magic to somebody that they're going to be able to do something with, and adapt it to their world and keep snowballing forward. Or there's the guy that I'm going to do whatever I have to do to sell this to you. And that might mean I might start employing, if I give you a set of instructions that teaches you A, B, and C, but when I'm demoing it, I throw in D, E, and F to make it more convincing, and it's not included in the instructions, that's a problem for me. That's an ethical problem. One, you're going to come back to me and say, how did you do that? Yeah, how did you do that? So here's another example. When I came growing up in the 80s, I went to Tannen's Magic Shop in New York City. Magical place back then, and I haven't been for years and years, but this is probably 3 or 4 locations ago. The elevator opened up, and you were magically in the shop. Boom, right there. It was like you went up, 16, 17 flights inside this building. There was no hallway to walk down. It opened up, and you're in this magical world, Tannen's. And I went on my first I was like 16, my first big book buying binge back then, and probably bought $150, $200 worth of books back in the 80s.
Now that's 2 books.
Oh, exactly. I know. I look back at the prices. A lot of them were paperbacks, or a lot of the old Paul Harris books. They were like $9, but that was average. That's what you spent. So I bought a copy of Las Vegas Close-Up, which was Paul Harris' book, and he taught a trick in there called Cross Twist, which is essentially Bizarre Twist, which has become a modern-day little mini packet trick, but done with one hand. It's the one-hand phase. Now, it's just most people put it as their second phase before the color change, and they'll do a one-handed version. He did not, meaning Paul Harris is the he I'm referring to, he did not teach how to do the routine. Now, I happened to be in the magic shop, and the guy who sold me the book did the full routine. He did Bizarre Twist. Leading into that, I went to where I was staying, which was an hour away on Long Island, start flipping through it, realizing, okay, I understand how to do this part, but how did you get to there? I would have had to find it in a different book, and it was Paul Harris Shares His Most Intimate Secrets, something like that. Anyways, I talked my parents into taking me back to Tannen's in Manhattan, major schlep. Went in there, asked for that book, and they did not have it. And it was a Saturday afternoon. The place was actually jammed. I've come to find out it was a Magic hangout, and some of the major superstars of Magic were mingling around.
You were pushing them out of the way to go find a book.
Exactly. But here's the lesson I'm saying. There was one guy, and I would love to know who it is. Somebody contact me and let me know. This would be about 1988. This one African-American magician who saw me the day before, and I may have interacted with them. I asked about the book. He said they didn't have it. And he pulled me aside and he taught me how to do Bizarre Twist. I mean, I think I appeared that I would understand it and you didn't think he was wasting his time, but he made a snap decision right then and there. I'm going to pull this guy away, have to deal with people looking over his shoulder and picking up the knowledge right there. I'm also not selling at the time. Everything the manager probably doesn't want him to be doing. I don't know that I would still be doing magic, and this sounds very dramatic, if it weren't for that moment, because that was my first time of looking at a book and saying, I can't do this. This doesn't work unless I get this little magical piece of information from this person. And he gave it to me, allowing me to learn it and move on. And so what I try to do at my shop is give that to somebody else. I believe in the investment with the right student behind the counter. I'll spend 30 minutes with them just talking about who their influences are. And that's the magic question. That's where I know if they have influences, I don't care who they are. I don't care who their influences are. If they can name one, I know we're in the right ballpark.
Yeah, I mean, obviously those experiences are the strong ones, and whether it's because it was a bridge in the gap, or whether I believe it's because it was a real interpersonal experience. It was just an opportunity that someone showed you that they cared. Like we tend to see this over and over again, that the reason why someone ends up having a whole career in math is because one great math teacher, and the reason why someone hates math is because that one horrible math teacher. So I think the real grain to pull out of that is the nugget of humanity when helping anybody in their magic journey. And there's a lot of different moments that happen in the journey. One big moment in a magic journey that I love talking about is when you're a young kid and you think you know stuff, and then you meet someone who absolutely fools you within just like inches of your life. Like, you just have no idea up from down. You're like, I thought I understood, but I don't. And that's a magic moment that I held in high regard. But the one that you're talking about now is also a moment in many people's magic careers, where somebody extends more information that they need to. They work harder than they have to. They teach more things than they necessarily should, in order to help someone along and to be on this side of the brotherhood. So I think it says a lot about yeah, go ahead.
It goes the other way too, though, because as a hobbyist for so many years, whenever vacation I was going on or whatever town I'd go to, like we all did, you immediately look up to see where's the nearest magic shop, and you go in. You never know who's behind the counter. Okay, that's the bottom line. Somewhere in my brain, if I had it, I would think a guy behind the magic counter was a pretty cool guy. What a great job. But I've also had to encounter some kind of shady dudes or just not good magicians, and I don't know how they got the gig or whatever. I would try to tell potential customers or visitors to a magic shop to set aside any preconceived notions of who's there. Meaning, you don't know if this guy is a published author, or if or whatever it is. Don't challenge the magician behind the counter, because he may have something to share with you. He might be able to help you out. And I've done it. I've walked into a magic shop. I see the guy at the counter and I start name dropping, or I start citing books.
Yeah.
Thinking that it's going to get me the key to the the inner city.
He's going to go, here's the real room. Come on in the back.
I've been waiting for you the whole time. I'm waiting for somebody to come in and ask me about Marlowe. Yeah. Okay,
here's the back room.
No, they smell that out really fast. Very different. So what I'm saying is it's a two-way thing. Respect the magic guy. They're also not mimes and clowns, and they're to just do a show for you when you walk in. It is a business, but we're glad to perform for you. Just kind of be nice to us, be genuine, and we'll do the same thing.
I love it. Let's change gears a bit and talk
You got it.
about the maybe I'm saying it wrong, but the writing that you're doing for Vanish.
Oh,
Vanish Magic Magazine. I know that you're doing. Is it? I know it's writing, but do you do also collecting of stuff or just writing?
well, here, I'll tell you what's going on because I mean, this is public knowledge now, but I did right when I released my first book. It did well, and the editor of Vanish magazine, Paul, he had offered me a job or a chance to put some magic out there. So for about 2 years, I had my little column out there. It was called Throwing Shade, which those that do subscribe to Vanish, it's available on all the back issues, and that was that. And I kind of I set it aside, not because a lot of people were coming to me saying, "Why are you giving it all away for free?" And that's not what it was. But I was giving away my emotional energy and things like that. It wasn't so much about the finances. Well, anyways, I put out my second book and that, and I was kind of hungry a little bit, like thinking about going back to start the column up again, but something else fell into my lap. I'm actually starting in February taking over Magicana for Genie or Magicana.
Right.
Yeah. So I think I got that gig primarily because here's another change. Okay, here we go. You wanted a change. Or what were the changes from the old days to the new days? Let's take a classic Paul Harris book. Once I knew who Paul Harris was, I got everything he had. Part of the fun for me was these new names that would pop up in the book. Be it and they were new to me, like an Alan Ackerman or a Dana Betts, or there was just a whole list of names that would just pop up, guest players, we'll say. And then, and those books were fun, and they were fun to read, and I just liked that little flavor, and it was like an endorsement to me, like, wow, this guy must be pretty cool if he's getting to be in one of Paul Harris's books. So as the years went on, I seemed to see less and less of that. It seemed to be there were two types of books. It was going to be the collected works of blah, 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 and it's all their stuff. Or it was like collective magazines all bound together, and then you would get a whole bunch of different people's stuff in there. But the book of having 20 tricks and 14 of them were yours, and you were gonna, I don't want to say fill it and use filler, but you had other people's contributions put in there, and those didn't seem to be happening. And when I put my 80s book out, I was like, well, I want that. I want to try to get some names involved for a couple of reasons. One, that endorsement thing we're talking about. If I can put a Chris Mayhew into a book or something like that, there's an association that becomes connected. Like, why would he be willing to go into somebody's book who doesn't know what he's talking about? But to get people in my book as a total unknown, I had to go ask a lot of people for things. And I don't blame a single person for turning me down, because I would probably turn myself down too. I didn't know who I was. But fortunately enough, people did give me some stuff, and the book ended up being pretty good. But the moral was, I think I proved to people that for one of the skill sets that you need for at least Magicana is the ability to go out and get some magic, because that magazine is getting published every single month and it must be there. And I grew up in a world thinking, like from the time I was a little kid, thinking that people are submitting magic to be published and there's a waiting list a mile long to get it. It's an unattainable thing, you know?
Yeah.
It's not the case, man. We're looking for stuff. We want to get it bad. It's a content driven world, and we need the content. And it's also, that's another thing, trying to get to somebody to say, hey, would you like to put a trick in this magazine? And then they start asking me about performance rights and stuff. And I'm like, what happened here? It used to just be you were going to put in something for the history of magic, giving it back to that. Now it's like, well, I need to be able to make a living off of it, I suppose.
Right. So, yeah, I mean, a lot is changing like that. Have you noticed anything changing in terms of maybe interest in magic magazines from both ends, both the people that are seeking as a place to release a trick? Like, do a lot of people do that still, or is that less common? And then viewership as well.
Well, I think the numbers of obviously Magic went away. Yeah. Magic Magazine went away. So at that time, Vanish swept in. It's a free magazine, but so that helps. Do I think I have to believe that Genie's numbers have dropped? because all print magazines have dropped, just the way of it. But they have also put together a very good online magazine. It's a very interactive experiment, so that it gives you a lot of bonus stuff. And I guess I don't even think it was a choice. You had to do that if you want to survive. So I still run into the thing working in the magic shop where I'll try to push my book on somebody that I'm selling there at the shop, which surprisingly works very well. People are much more willing to buy a book if they see the magician right there in the shop. But I never thought it would truly be the case. I get a lot of people like, wow, I just don't buy books. Or if I'll say, hey, I'm in that magazine, you should get a subscription to that. He goes, well, I don't get magazines. That is an uphill battle. It really is. As a budding magician, would I know that submitting something into a magazine is a path? Right? No, I don't think I would know that, because they have a path. They throw it up on YouTube and roll the dice and hope that it becomes viral.
I mean, I don't think it's that simple. I think there's a little bit more to it than that, and I think that there are other paths that aren't necessarily magazines right now. That, you know, there may be people who are so influential that releasing something on their channel has just as wide or wider of a reach as a magazine does, right?
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and there's other ways, you know, Instagram, there's also something where there was the same community that was built around everyone receiving the same issue of a magazine all at the same time is now an even tighter community of people all following the same hashtags on Instagram and seeing what each other are posting every day and every hour.
I guess the advantage I still see over the magazine versus that, yes, you get so much more content with the Instagram and thing, but with that, the shelf life of these things, I think, is so small. I loved waiting around for 3 tricks a month that would come out in the Magic magazine. I got to learn 3 new tricks.
And there's a few different values of a magazine that I'll point out. The first is that it is an establishment, in the sense of you getting into a magazine, as much as you are joking or not joking about how long the line is of people trying to submit stuff. Getting published in a magazine is a simple way to get published, where you are published and not just released. Those are different words, and those are different meanings, and they hold different bearings, and they require different levels of quality, because they are, you know, anybody can release anything, but not anybody can publish anything if you are the watcher over of the magazine. So there are tons of benefits to it. There's also you know, places like feeds that you end up being in because of being in a magazine, you know, people who, you know, will see your name because you're, and things of that sort. So there's tons of benefits. I'm not vouching by any means the internet's better, but I am saying that it's not just like plug it into YouTube and hope it goes viral. There are other more idiosyncratic aspects of the community now online.
I agree. I was being a little general with that, but absolutely,
of course.
Yeah, I would think it would be completely false to think that magazines aren't primarily maybe being read by an older demographic. I mean, I think that's pretty safe to say. Put it this way: magicians that are coming into my shop that want, hey, do you have the newest issue of Genie? Yeah, it's not a kid asking for it. But it's also a positive with that side. Why shouldn't you be selling your magic or trying to reach the magic audience over the age of 40?
Of course, you know? they exist. If you want to go to any magic club meeting and tell me who's there, right? So if someone was asking me who I was going to sell to in a magic community, it would be the guys that are over 40 and have a car, and not the ones that are under 14. And you know what I mean? There's obviously a ton of benefit to that. And also, if you want regularly released magic that other people aren't doing, go read a magazine, right? Like, that's you're going to get amazing regular magic that is quality assured, tested, current, and is not in the same scope as a viral video. So there's obviously a lot of benefits to it. The next thing I wanted to jump into, and this is like really what I wanted to focus on a bit more, is the idea of overlapping your interests together. And particularly, you know, your most recent book is the one that overlaps magic and music. We get pigeonholed into magic, and I struggle to talk about my other enjoyments. So how can somebody, we're all different. Everybody listening to this is different than another person listening to this. We have different interests, different styles, but how can somebody take their interest and take magic and put it together and have it not feel and look silly, and hurt and be
Sure,
weird?
sure. Well, let's see. And again, I can only speak for how I did it.
For sure.
It's a weird philosophy. As I was growing up doing the music thing, my sister, and that's I actually dedicated her the dedication of this current book to her. I said something about because she had the bright idea of putting this whole music magic thing together in the first place. She was trying all the time to get me to somehow do magic from the stage while I'm in a band or whatever. And I don't even know what that meant. If it was fireballs shooting from my hands while I'm playing or whatever. And I would always say to her, and I still believe this to be true, that a magician who plays music, that's pretty cool. I mean, they're gonna think you're cooler. A musician that's doing magic, that just doesn't work. You're trying to be up on stage being all cool and brooding as this musician, and now pick a card. It just doesn't. There's something.
So sorry. So one more time, you're saying a magician who plays music is cool, but a musician who does magic is not cool.
Okay, no.
Or the other way.
Right. A magician who happens to play music, that just seems like a bonus to me. Like magicians have been saddled with a reputation of being kind of dorky. Let's just be real. It's out there, and it might be deserved, but it's out there. And musicians, even though some of them are the most loser people you're ever going to find in the world, there's a certain cool factor that comes with that. So I think you're only becoming a little bit cooler in your magic brand if you happen to know a little bit.
The magician makes himself less cool by doing a magic trick.
That's exactly right. It's like, I mean, come on, let's be real. You see, imagine Bono from U2's up there giving his political speech or whatever, and the next thing you know, he's going into some 3-rope trick or whatever. It sucks the air out of the entire thing.
Maybe the reason why is because amateur music is a little better than amateur magic. Like if I picked up a guitar and I played my, like a nice little 3-chord song, like you'd clap, but I don't know if you'd clap if I did a long, or if I did my 3-rope routine and I was rambling and I don't know if you'd clap. Like, I don't know.
So I always had a lot of trepidation about that. I was never comfortable about that. As a matter of fact, if I was having a music party, there was going to be some after hours. I'd put my magic books away. I didn't want anybody to talk. I didn't hide the magic books.
They're gonna come over. They're gonna be like, "Nerd."
That's what I did not want in any way, shape, or form. Now, if I had a bunch of magician guys around and all of a sudden I started strumming the guitar, that seems kind of okay.
They're like, "Oh, Jonathan, where do you work?" Are you like, construction? NASCAR? Footballs? What do you mean? Where do you work? Right. I work at the car store.
I'm just trying to be a manly man. Not get beat up on a daily basis.
What do you mean, where do I work? Let's go throw around the pigskin. Stop talking about work.
but for me, so I went through my phases where my performance style was whatever my current favorite magician, whoever I just saw, I was in a Jay Sankey phase or a Paul Harris phase or whatever trick. I learned it verbatim, the pattern. And that's what I did. And I equate that in the music world to being in a cover band. That's good. I think that's a good way to go. I think everybody should learn other people's routines because it's next to impossible as an amateur coming out of the gate to find yourself.
Here's a guitar. Go to town. What are you possibly going to do?
You got to have a backlog of material, and it's going to be other people's stuff. What are you
going to do if you don't know other people's songs? Yeah.
Right. I got to the point where I'm hanging with people that I'm my other shared interests, my music. I'm with them. Our conversations have all been about music-based things or whatever. It just kind of naturally fell into place. I would, instead of grabbing a coin to do a coin trick, I had a guitar pick on me. So it made sense. If I'm going to why do I have to make a coin disappear? Why don't I make what's naturally in my hand disappear first? A guitar pick. It actually all started with one joke. Can I tell you my little gag?
Yeah.
I managed to put this into 2 different books now in 2 different ways. But
all of them.
On the fly one day, I realized that I picked up a deck of cards and I had a guitar pick. And I went, here. And I handed the pick to somebody.
Pick a
I said,
card.
pick a card.
Yeah.
Right. And it all went from there. And I didn't make that up. I'm sure, I mean, I thought I made it up, but it's since become a lot of different musicians repertoire right there. But it kind of all went from there. I just started finding things. My story here is it can't be forced. You're right. And also, I think that other thing that you're going to put into your magic needs to be universal. Music's a universal thing. Everybody knows music.
Right. Do you think it's difficult to say like the world is kind of like a gymnastics?
Well, yeah, fitness. I'm a fitness buff, as you can see by these cards I'm taking out here, and it just things start to get a little weird.
Well, so just to break that down, you know, the difference between talking about something that everybody understands for your magic trick versus things that don't understand is when you explain your magic in terms of things that everybody understands, then you're using something they understand to describe something they don't understand. When you're just using your magic to talk about something that they don't understand, then you're using something they don't understand to describe something they don't understand, right? So it's like it's like saying, I understand you're struggling to get algebra. Okay, algebra is a lot like organic chemistry. It's like, well, I don't know what organic chemistry is, so
that's right. Yeah. Well, trust me, it is.
Right. So it's the same thing. Like it's like, let me show you a magic trick about the polarity of magnets, and it's just like, well, I don't.
That's going to go over somebody's head. That's not one of these universal hooks,
right?
I guess. Right. Now, what are those universal hooks? I don't know. Food, maybe. That's a big one. Love, but again, what are people's interests? Movies. I see that happening a lot, where you can equate that. It's amazing how you can hook somebody in simply by. I'll give you an example. If I'm going to do a torn and restored card, I will always ask somebody what their favorite band is. What's a band that if they broke up, you would just
that's great,
be devastated.
That's great.
And so they say whatever they're going to say. Backstreet Boys. And I write that on the back of the card, and then you proceed to do your thing. You're breaking up the band, but don't worry, you're going to restore it. One, yes, you got the magical moment of restoring the card, but you did something better. You kept their favorite band together. You know, and that sounds hokey, but they're going to remember the card trick. Not even the card trick. They're going to remember the band that got broken up and put back together before a torn and restored card bit.
Totally. It's the difference between watching just the climax of a movie or all the beginning parts. Like you need to watch the beginning parts to care about who the characters are, so that when they're horrifically murdered, you know, you feel it and it's emotional, right? So now you have an opportunity. The music, the band breaking together is brilliant. Even if, never mind if the rest of the lines of patter have anything to do with that. You just ask,
right?
Have you ever had a band break together? What would they be horrible? Boom, you write it down, and then you say, let me show you a cool trick, and you do the whole trick. And if they don't at one point think to themselves about, oh, the band breaking together is kind of like this card ripping up together and all. And
yeah, you don't have to say that.
You don't have to say it, right? You don't have to say it. And more importantly, now there's this like hook in the real world that whenever they think of that band and they think about it breaking together, they're like, that magician did a trick about it. And the trick was specific because I mentioned the band to him, right? He did it to me. He didn't just say, remember when the Beatles broke up in 19... Right? Like he didn't say that. He said,
what was your favorite band?
Your favorite band, right. So I love that.
Nobody has a favorite card. They don't. Magicians might have a favorite card, but I've seen plenty of magicians say, "What's your favorite card?" Queen of Hearts or whatever it is. Maybe what's your favorite band isn't the easiest thing, but they can. What's the band you like?
Music you listen to, like art or anything.
You get an emotional connection, and that sounds hokey and stuff, but those are the things that separate the next level magicians from the rest.
Absolutely. And early in my magic, I had a question for one of my magic mentors, and I asked him, should I be trying in my magic to, come up with premises that relate to the parts of the world that they already know about? Or should I be trying to come up with premises that inform them about parts of the world that they don't already know about? And he said to me, both. And I went, oh yeah. Right. Oh, yeah. I need to do magic. I need to draw from other people's lives to make it relevant. And then if the magic is valuable or awesome or interesting, then it'll hopefully stick with them and have an effect on any point, and any part of them for any part of the future on anything. So The answer is both. So both of those things you have to work towards is making it more relatable on the front end, and then making it more, relatable in terms of how that memory is going to stay put in their life in the back end.
You're right. Yeah, and I'm so glad that you did talk about the fact that you don't need to connect every line of patter to that.
No, and
universal hook.
that is that's one of the weaknesses that I find, and one of the challenges that I find when trying to relate some of your interests with each other is because you end up saying like, all there's billions and billions of particles, in the universe, and there's hundreds of cards in the deck. So as you take a card and put it in the deck, think of the particles in the universe being scrambled. Enough. It was enough when I said there's billions of particles in the universe and all of these cards in the deck. We don't need any more, right? Anything more is shoving it down your throat.
As a songwriter in my music days, very similar concept. I would come up with a theme for the song. Ooh, I want this song to be about blah, blah, blah. And I would try to make sure every line connected to that overall theme. It was overkill. It was not natural. If you have to connect your emotional hooks with that much effort, they're not really that hooky to begin with.
And one of the things is we're trying to enrich our magic, and part of that is making the experience fuller for an audience, and that means giving them the respect that they deserve in terms of, you have a concept. Trust me, your audience member can relate the band breaking up with the card ripping up in four.
Right. That's exactly
right. Give them that respect, because otherwise you're going to be doing a level of magic that's too dumbed down if you don't respect them the way that they deserve it. So,
boy, what's it called? Cardboard contortionists, a Jay Sankey routine, double torn and restored trick. And yeah, so he stumbled on the premise of physical fitness with that one. And I always felt like, okay, I got it. That's fine. It was like, look, they touched their toes, they pulled muscles, all of a sudden you rip your muscles. And it seemed to be a little too much. So yeah, that was a good lesson of just kind of just giving them enough information so they can start apply their meaning to it. I mean, I'm going to steer the ship a little bit, but yeah, giving it to them.
And so what else can you give somebody who is maybe who has a passion outside of magic and who is also being badgered by people to put those two together? What does one do? What steps does one take to start, making that sort of thing happen, or seeing if it's possible?
Well, okay, I think we just went through a whole batch where we were saying, don't force it. You don't have to connect every thought. I would almost think that the only way to know what works is to try all the things that don't work. So you might have to throw every false connection out there that you can and almost overkill it until you find the ones that really resonate, that are worth keeping. That's a tough one.
What is one to do with their passion and magic? What can one actually do? Is there any actions that they take? Is there anything that you've done when you were hoping to create something, or is it all just comes to you because of the sheer amount of time you spent with music?
A lot. Well, some of it, most of mine is just the sheer amount of time it just permeated its way into my life. I kind of think that's going to happen naturally if it's truly a passion that you have.
I like that. I really like that approach. Is if it's really hurting. If it's hurting to stick the two things together, then maybe that that first thing. Maybe there's not enough bits and pieces about that non-magic thing bouncing around in your brain that you have a vocabulary to use as ammunition for a magic trick.
That's exactly right. People know really fast when I start going, one, I like magic, but I also like music a lot. And it just feels natural. And if I wasn't doing magic and I was just talking to you about something, that music stuff would probably also find its way into my conversations.
Yeah, and people can tell immediately when you start talking about music that you also know about music, right? You're not just saying like, so I listened to a song the other day and songs remind me of
words.
Yeah, and when I hear words, I think so. For sure, it's valuable to love the thing and for it to be in your bones, every single day.
Now you might still, okay, so let's say it's in your bones and it's coming naturally and all that. there's still some things you can do. I mean, good old fashioned brainstorming, trying to
Of course.
find
Yeah.
connections, trying to find double meanings, little things just to trigger a moment.
Hmm.
Um,
And also, I'll
the
stress that like you don't have to be obsessed with music to do a magic trick where you talk about how music and magic are related, because music is one of those things that other people can relate to. So never mind the
right.
you relating to it, other people can relate. I do a trick that has to do with lying. And that's not because I love liars. It's because
It's
people can
universal.
relate to lying, right?
That's right.
I'm not tying anyone's hands behind their back, but definitely, if you're trying to pair things together, I like the idea of making sure that they both have that much meaning.
They have to have the same emotional weight. Yeah, for it to truly be effective, and it's not looking like you're just sprinkling over whatever your current flavor of the month interest is over into your magic. I'm going through a movie phase, or I'm going through a food phase, or no, people are going to know that these are equal passions that have melded together, because they are.
We are now approaching some of the final. We've got some final wrap up
Okay.
questions at the
Okay.
end. So the first is the question of the week. So you have an opportunity. You've got all of the magicians listening to you, and an opportunity to ask them something that either you want to hear their collective answers to, or something that you want them to ask themselves. And this is a question we're going to be sharing online, so you're going to get to actually be able to read through all of their answers. So what is the question of the week? What is it that you want to ask the magicians of the world?
Okay. Question: like, why have you stopped doing specific tricks? Is it because they don't play well for the audience, or is it because you're tired of performing them? I'm genuinely curious of that, because I have been doing a lot of the same tricks for the last 25 years and they work for me. And I see those people that, there's a definite shelf life. They put it away. They don't want to do it anymore after they've done it 20 times or some incredibly small number like that. So again, I want to know why people decide to put tricks away. Is it because they're tired of performing it, or because it's not getting the reaction that they think it
I love that.
deserves?
I think I'll answer it for me personally, just so that I don't have to do it in the comments later. But my the reason why I stopped doing it is solely because it doesn't get the reaction that it
Right.
deserves. But there's two different things. It could either be that it's getting not a good enough reaction, or that it's not getting the right reaction, and it's not getting the reaction that I want.
Right.
So there's
Right.
even tricks that I have stopped doing because they are too good comparative to the rest of the stuff that I'm doing.
Oh, I got you. Yeah.
And it makes
No.
the rest of the show forgotten and nobody cares. And so the reaction itself plays a big role for me personally. But I'm also interested to know, like, do people just fall out of love with stuff, or what happens? So I love that. The next is similar to the question of the week, but it's the magical PSA. So you have a public service announcement, something to tell all the magicians of the world. We've had everything from stop doing banana bandana all the way to love magic and love yourself. What's your PSA? What is it that you want to tell the magicians of the world?
Okay, my PSA, and this actually probably applies to life, but specifically with magic performance: slow down.
I
And I
love
know we
it.
were just talking about
Love it.
speeding it up. I just did it. I was at a convention, performed a convention last or 2 weeks ago, and it was a 30-minute set. And I did something I've never done before, but I put the little voice recorder on my phone and went on stage. And when I just recorded only the audio, and I wasn't trying to do any great social experiment. I was just kind of curious. And immediately I realized I'm a guy that's performed a lot. I'm flying. It is tough. How can I expect somebody to? I can't entertain them if I'm having to force them to try to decipher what it is I'm saying.
Right.
And that I know nerves tend to come into effect with that, and people tend to talk fast. But yeah, slow down with just just what you're saying. The natural presentation is the pace you think you're speaking. It's twice as fast.
Yeah, absolutely. Slow right down. I like that, and it's the biggest advice from that I give myself every time I step off stage is it was good, you were too fast. So I
And it
know
seems
that.
so Understandable. Well, we all know that, but my gosh, it just keeps coming up in my work as a problem. So yeah.
The next part is the endless chain. So, in order to get the podcast going on for eternity, we get every guest to recommend another guest. So, who must we have on the podcast?
You must have, okay, I'll tell you, a creative force out of Columbus, Ohio. His name is Seth Race.
Seth Race.
Seth Race. He released a couple tricks recently. Porous. It's with a Sharpie marker, and the logo Sharpie
Oh
goes inside
yeah.
of a
Oh
dollar bill.
yeah. Yeah yeah.
He's got a couple new things out. Non-Pulse Magic, I believe, is the name of his company.
Cool.
That guy eats, sleeps, digests magic, and is truly one of the most creative people I've ever met. And I don't say that about anybody. He is a creative guy.
I love that. Super interested there. The next is the plug. So I know we spoke briefly about it, but do you want to talk a little bit about your most recent book and maybe how people can keep in touch with what you're doing with Magicana as well?
Absolutely. Well, let's take them first with Magicana. You gotta get that subscription to Genie. You'll get 3 tricks every single month. That I'll probably include one of my own. This is not the vehicle for my magic, so I'll put it in maybe once every quarter or so. But yeah, an opportunity for people to get published. Here's another quick thing. Let me just say this. Since I did look at being published at an early age as being this unattainable thing, something very tough. We didn't get into this, but I had a couple doors shut on my face along the way of trying to publish stuff, and maybe it wasn't ready. And that ended up being a blessing in disguise. But at the time, it took me away from wanting to do it for a while. That was a big. I submitted something into Magic and got the closed door, boom, and I was like, well, that's that. Don't want to do that anymore. So I promised myself that if in the opportunity, I'm going to grant a couple dreams for some young people out there. I'm going to give people an opportunity. But also with that, my Magicana articles, I want people to learn magic from some of the same people that I did. Right. So you're going to see, I've gone to...
You see the old and the new.
That's exactly what's happening. Amazing. I'm going to be publishing stuff from some older established artists along with people that no one has ever heard of.
Amazing. I love that. The next is the sort of the modern question. So what is something in Magic 2018, 2019 that you really like? And then something in Magic 2018, 2019, which you could really do without and you don't like?
Okay. In Magic in 2018, I love how, because of social media, the world has opened up.
Love it.
Be it if it's magic coming out of South Korea or whatever, just stuff I never would have had access to, of seeing. And magic needs that. It needs new lifeblood and exposure, and we need to be able to see from those. So that's wonderful. I love how social media has made it easier to connect with every other magician, or just to see the good, see what it is. That's a wonderful thing. What I don't like, it's the same thing. We've devalued the art to an extent because it's too attainable. How can you have such appreciation for something when it's just a click of a button away to learn how to do it? So that's a problem. Here's another problem that I have with Magic of 2018. Accidental exposure. I'm not talking about people that are putting up a tutorial teaching how to do a trick, right or wrong, if it's their trick or not. I'm not even referring to them. I'm referring to the person that's doing an effect so poorly and posting it that everybody can see what's going on. And that happens a lot. And as a person who works in a magic shop, don't fool yourself. Everybody knows what a thumb tip is, okay?
You know what? I totally see that. But before, when you were saying, some of it I agree and some of it I disagree. I think that I'm not terribly worried about people doing bad magic online because it's not going to reach critical mass if everybody knows how they do it. It's just going to go to their magician friends, that little circle. So I'm not terribly worried. I mean, it looks like it's spreading everywhere, but really it's just us magicians seeing
It might be
a
just
whole
a
bunch of
false
shitty
fear.
magic. Yeah, it's just us seeing a bunch of shitty magic in our feed. But that being said, there is something going on with a level of exposure to magic, not to secrets, just exposure to magic, where even a little bits of secrets make things like thumb tips much harder to use.
Right.
Much
Invisible thread is another thing.
much harder to use. Double lifts are much harder to get away with now.
Right.
And people say, like if people are catching your double lifting, you're just not that good at it. And part of me says that that's true. You can get better. But part of me says if there are moves and magic ideas that are working their way into general knowledge, the approach isn't to make your double lift so perfect that they can't see it. The approach might be to find a move that they don't know about.
That's exactly right.
Because I think that the incremental, the marginal difference that you'll get in making your double lift more invisible versus the much bigger change you'll get in coming up with or discovering a new method that isn't so exposed will be a much better one.
Very true. Very true. Good point.
And with that, we are approaching the end. The last and final question is the favorite part. So people have been listening to us talk for who knows how long after we edited, about an hour or so. But they've been doing, who knows, they've been walking their dog, washing their dishes. And we said a lot of interesting and valuable stuff. So each one of us will mention something from the episode that we think is a particularly valuable take-home point. And for me, there was two different things that I really wanted to isolate. One was selfishly the reason why I wanted to bring you on, which is that I wanted to hear you talk about overlapping interests and talk about how to get those to play into each other. And that was really, really valuable to me as a take-home point, just to hear what your process was. And more specifically, the valuable part was, hearing that obviously it takes both sitting down and allotting time to do it, as well as, doing more of what I was doing, which is just letting enough of the good stuff bounce around in your brain so that when you do think about it, you've got a tool belt and an arsenal wide enough that when you pull from it, you've got a good variety and you come up with something brilliant. So that was a take-home point for me and something really strong. What about you? What was a highlight or take-home point for people who have been listening to the whole thing?
That was good. You took mine. No, I would say, I had my own, as I was saying it, a little self-revelation moment where I said, if you have to work so hard at trying to connect two of your passions together, perhaps one of them isn't really a passion. It shouldn't be so laborious.
Totally. And I thought that was a really great moment. Just the thought that that in conjunction with what I was mentioning afterwards, that it doesn't need to be a passion for you to relate to two things. So there's probably someone at home who's like, oh, I care about cooking, but maybe not enough to make it my, no, not at all. If you want to talk about cooking in a show, go ahead, talk about cooking. But if you want to talk about it at a level that makes it clear that you are fluent in that as well as being fluent in magic, then you obviously, it needs to be a passion. You need to have that knowledge. You can't fake fluentness,
and you can't fake passion, and that's really what it is.
You can't fake, like, fluent. There's probably a right word, but fluentness for now. So you can't fake that sort of stuff. So and part of that all the way comes down to who you are as a performer, and what things you're trying to telegraph, and some things are harder to fake, like that, like your loves and your passions and your interests. You can pretend to be Jay Sankey for the first few years of your life, of your magic career, I mean, but it's much more difficult to pretend to love cookies or whatever,
right?
Because people will see right through that. So
that's exactly right. They call it it's a passion for a reason, and if it's really a passion, it's gonna be there. You don't have to really worry about plugging it in.
I love it. Well, there you go. And I know you mentioned Magicana, but quickly talk about the book and where people can find it.
You bet. Okay, so I this last year I put out The Magic of Jonathan Friedman, the musical, through Vanishing Ink. They're the ones actually that put it out. It's a Vanishing Ink production. Can be at your local retailer. You can find it. And also you can order it directly online through Vanishing Ink. They put out a wonderful full color book. It's one of the first to come out that way, and it exceeded my expectations in every way, shape, and form. I have also just released a standalone little booklet called The Fifth Fourth, which I believe is coming out through Murphy's. I think it's out now, actually. It was featured in my At the Table Murphy's lecture, and this is kind of a
Amazing.
companion guide for it.
Amazing. Well, I love that. And I think that anybody who, first of all, there's a lot more people than, well, maybe not more than you think, but there's a lot more people than anyone would think that have the overlap between magic and music that'll just get a kick out of this. Oh, no, man.
For years, I thought I was the only one.
No, it comes up over and over and over and over and over again. So I think already that's a really fantastic niche. But just the idea of reading into this to find out more about how to relate your own things and to see what he's done, I think is a really, really valuable tool. So with that, thank you so much, Jonathan, for coming and joining us on the podcast. And with that, thank you to everybody at home who came and listened and who was a part of this.
Thank you, everybody.
Amazing. And we will see you all next Thursday. Peace. Well, there you have it, episode 136. I hope you liked it, and I hope that you learned something, and I hope that you take some sort of action. So go and set aside 1 minute, 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 30 minutes, an hour, however much time you want, and work on one new presentation. And let me know how it goes. Send me a message to discourse@discourseandmagic.com, or send me a message on Instagram, whatever you want. I will see you later, but most importantly, I hope that I see you on the next episode of Discourse and Magic next Thursday. Peace.